What's up, everybody, and welcome to Block and Build, a podcast from Convergence Magazine. I'm your host and the publisher of Convergence, Caden Mock. On this show, we are building a roadmap for the movement that's working to block the impacts of rising authoritarianism while building the strength and resilience of a broad front that we need to win. This week on the show, we're exploring local organizing to stop building new data centers that form the material basis for big tech to deploy computationally expensive class war tech like AI and crypto. The data centers and resources that fuel these highly speculative tech markets often show up in communities that are poor, are already marginalized, and that makes it hard for those communities to have a say on the impacts of their pollution and costs. But I am joined today by a panel of folks who are involved in organizing against these intrusive and dangerous development projects. My guests include the Senior Movement Building Director at MediaJustice, Myaisha, organizer with the No Desert Data Center Coalition, Vivek Bharathan, and Executive Director of Memphis Community Against Pollution, Keshaun Pearson. But first, of course, these headlines. To the surprise of no one, RFK Jr.'s Health and Human Services Department restricted access to the updated COVID booster. The revised recommendations say that individuals under 65 need to be quote-unquote high risk in order to receive the vaccine. These restrictions also apply to kids who are under 18. Meanwhile, basically every major medical association in the United States has pointed out that, in fact, a seasonal booster is kind of the way to go here as we stagger through the pandemic's emerging seasonal spike. And we are in a late summer / early fall surge just in time for back to school. While the FDA guidelines mean that people with decent health insurance and a primary care provider probably can get an insurance-covered booster this fall, if you aren't one of those people, getting vaccinated just got way harder. The long-term effect of this kind of policy also means that each year the companies who manufacture vaccines will make fewer of them, making long-term availability worse. And that's kind of the playbook here. RFK Jr. isn't trying to take away everything at once, but to put his hand on the scale of the market and let our for-profit healthcare system do its ghoulish work. If, like me, you do want to get vaccinated this fall, there are a few things that you can do to get the jab. First of all, see if your primary care provider's office might be delivering doses. And if that route doesn't work for you for whatever reason, take a look at the entire list of quote-unquote high-risk conditions and see if any qualify you for a vaccine. It's a much longer list than you might think. I've also been hearing that some pharmacies will just ask if you have a high-risk condition without verifying what that risk is or asking further questions, although this might mean that you will run into some insurance issues later on, though it does mean that you can get the shot. Either way, good luck, I guess. This is a great time to start wearing a mask indoor in public spaces, also if you've been a little lax over the summer, since infection rates are spiking in every region of the United States. You may have also caught wind of incumbent New York City mayoral candidate Eric Adams being flown to Florida this week to meet with a billionaire Trump advisor to, quote, discuss the possibility of a position with the administration should he choose to drop out of the mayoral race. In other words, a bribe. He's being bribed. This is a conspiracy to manipulate an election through bribery happening out in the open. As we know, Trump has publicly stated that he wants all candidates aside from Cuomo to drop out of the race in order to create a chance to stop Zohran Mamdani from winning in a fair election. I don't need to parse every detail of this conspiratorial activity to make the point that this is the oligarchy very aggressively, perhaps overconfidently, showing their hand that they will always organize around their own class solidarity. The point of leverage that we might have here is that this level of open-air corruption and class organizing among the rich hasn't ever happened quite this obviously, and frankly stupidly, across party lines. With Adams and Cuomo being so-called Democrats, whom the far-right MAGA coalition are putting their money and bribes behind against a Democratic primary winner, it doesn't take much conspiratorial dot connecting for the average voter to understand what's going on here. A vote for anyone other than Zohran is a vote for Trump and the MAGA agenda. It seems that November's general election in New York will be the first of many referenda to come on how much voters are willing to put up with from such open-air corruption.
Hey everybody, this is Maurice Mitchell, National Director of the Working Families Party. I read and give to Convergence because it has become a home for me to engage in critical analysis, find practical advice for organizing and strategy, and inspiration in the belief that a better world is not only possible, we can build it.
To make either a one-time donation or become a sustaining member, visit convergencemag.com/donate. You can find a direct link in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
So, those folks who are pushing AI as this inevitable arms race are currently winning the mainstream narrative around big data. You'll find very little critique of the AI bubble and its very real costs in mainstream media, and publications like the Washington Post have even gone so far as to critique the critiques of AI's environmental impact. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of Energy, climate change denier, and former natural gas company exec, who you might know as having famously drank fracking water to just demonstrate its supposed safety, Chris Wright had this to say about the AI arms race earlier this week.
At its essence, artificial intelligence takes electricity and turns it into intelligence, empowering Americans.
But more and more people are noticing the negative impact of these huge new data centers in their communities, which all this AI fever relies on. Whether it's hidden in their soaring energy bills, which offset the cost of multi-billion-dollar corporations that are leeching off the local grid, or the impact on the environment and health of their community. Organizers have been working at the local level to push back on this demand for more polluting data centers in city and county governments, which often have direct power over who builds what where. Today, I'm joined by a panel of organizers who are part of this new front in the struggle against big tech to discuss the proliferation of these data centers and the strategies that you can deploy in your community to fight back. My guests include Senior Movement Building Director at MediaJustice, Myaisha Hayes. Myaisha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We've also got an organizer with the No Desert Data Center Coalition in Tucson, Arizona, Vivek Bharathan. Vivek, it's good to see you.
You too, Caden. Hi.
And the Executive Director of Memphis Community Against Pollution, Keshaun Pearson. Keshaun, thank you for joining us.
Thank you all for having me.
Awesome. Well, I want to start out by grounding our listeners in each of your personal experiences in data center organizing. Maybe we'll start with Keshaun and Vivek. Could you tell us where your organizing is based and a brief background of the local impact that you've been seeing from these data centers? And we'll start with you, Keshaun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm glad to be here with this esteemed panel. The work Myaisha and the work Vivek have done in this space has literally transformed my experience and my knowledge. And so here in Memphis, as the name says, Memphis Community Against Pollution is where our story began. And it started June 5th of 2024. When the XAI project was announced by Elon Musk via our Greater Memphis Chamber here in the city of Memphis. Now, I learned about the project directly from the mayor of the city as we discussed an environmental plan for our city to make it healthier. And unfortunately, the plan did not come to fruition, but the XAI plans continue to evolve and to grow bigger. So we see where the priority shifted. And so for us, we have been in this fight against XAI and the consistent use of methane gas turbines that emit ethylene oxide. I mean, not ethylene oxide, but they emit nitrogen oxide, which contributes to smog at extremely high levels. In addition to that, they continue to buy up land, 522 acres. They purchased another 13 acres purchased from our city to build a water reuse facility, and then another 1 million square foot facility for Colossus 2. And so this project is continuing to expand, continue to pollute even more. And more recently, we found out they got 66 methane gas turbines that have been purchased for the use of the Colossus 2 facility. So we are fighting a continuing, ever-growing air quality issue. The city of Memphis and Shelby County has received an F grade as it pertains to ozone levels for nearly a decade at this point. And so for several years, we've seen nitrogen oxide continue to grow, as well as the asthma rates, the cancer rates, the emergency rates for our youth in the area as well. And so it's a fight that has been long-standing because it started even before XAI with Sterilization Service of Tennessee and the Wahalia Connection Pipeline, which we were successful in defeating. And so we won in the past, and all it took was people, people across the city, people across race, gender, across financial and economic lines to stand together against the folks who are oppressing us and extracting the wealth and the health from us.
Amazing. And I imagine a lot of that previous environmental justice organizing you've been doing has been instrumental to driving the campaign against XAI.
Yes, listen, everything revolves around what you have done lately. And so when you are consistently doing what is right, it is far easier for folks to work with you and support what that looks like. And so the organizing we've done around sterilization service of Tennessee and reducing the ethylene oxide emission levels across the country via the EPA's regulation, the shutting down of the crude oil pipeline project, the Byhalia Connection Pipeline, the fastest shutdown of a pipeline project in history, led by a Black community, right? 9 months. And so we've seen wins consistently, and we don't plan for that to stop.
Amazing. Vivek, could you tell us a little bit about what's been going on in Tucson and how you got involved with fighting a data center there?
Yeah, absolutely. So our story kind of starts in June when a bunch of us found out that there was going to be a data center constructed in Pima County, just east of Tucson, on 290 acres of land. And, that's kind of a number, right? And I'll get back to that in a second here. But a lot of us were primed for this in different ways. Like there was the knowledge about how much water it would consume, how much power it would push our energy costs up, and also just the process of how it was like kind of held in secret with NDAs. So we showed up to a Pima County Board of Supervisors meeting in June, where they were voting on whether or not to sell the land to the developer to build the data center. And unfortunately, at that meeting, they ended up voting 3-2 in favor of selling. Now that vote came during that meeting when I want to talk about the dynamics of that meeting because it kind of sets up the process too, which is the developer had ample opportunity to speak at length. The TEP, which is our electric power company, is a private company, and Tucson Water, which provides water services to the public, is a public utility. They were all on board with this plan to build a data center. Beal Infrastructure, which is the company that was developing the project, had representatives there to speak. The lawyer who was representing them also spoke at length, gave a really shitty PowerPoint presentation. And what I noticed in the room was that just everyone who had the chance to speak in favor of the project was able to do so at length, was able to receive and answer questions from the Board of Supervisors, and was paid to be there, right? Like everyone there, this was their job to be there. And if not everyone, then certainly close to everyone there was white. And that was some things I noticed in the room. And when we had a chance to speak, right, it was all community members, all of us there because we were galvanized around this issue, because we knew what it meant for the environment and for our wallets. And we had, each of us had 2 minutes to speak. We're not public speakers. We're community members. We did our best. And it was clear that the Board of Supervisors already had their minds made up. There was one supervisor, Rebecca Allen, who had done her research, spoke really eloquently about why this was a terrible idea, had actually talked to officials all over the country about their experiences with these data centers. And so after that, it was like, okay, I guess this is a campaign now, right? Because we knew that in order to serve the water that they need, the enormous amount of water that they need in a desert, that the Tucson City Council would have to annex the land into Tucson city limits. It was currently county land. So that was our next point of intervention. We came together as a diverse coalition of individuals. We were not organization supported. Like I said, none of us was paid to do this work. We were all doing this because we care for our community, we care for each other, we care for our families. And these were some of the easiest conversations I had. Like we just went to protests, we went to events that were already organized. We talked to people and we were like, hey, this is happening. And everyone, like literally within 15 to 30 seconds, they either already knew about it and thought it was a terrible idea, or they were like, yeah, that's a terrible idea. Let's not do that in the desert.
Sure.
Right? Yeah, it was really that easy. And so like we managed the Tucson, the county ran this process for the Board of Supervisors, the bureaucratic side of the county, right? The administration. Let me know if I should stop, because I could probably go on for the entire hour about this. And at the county and city levels, the bureaucracy, the management side of things really framed everything for the elected officials in a way that represented the corporation's interests and the developers' interests, right?
Yeah.
There was nothing there about an environmental assessment. There was nothing there about how this would affect jobs. There was nothing there about the impact of AI in general. It was all just corporate propaganda for the developer. And
And I think what's interesting about that is like what I'm hearing from your story is the thing that you were able to do as a coalition was like intervene on the way that people who are already against this see the levers of power that are available to them as just like everyday people, and like sort of turning the tables in that way.
That's exactly right. So they had these public information sessions, which were really just propaganda sessions where
Right.
the developer got to tell their side of the story and we got to ask questions. So we went there and we got loud, right? We made sure that they knew that the community was against this. And so through that work, we convinced Tucson City Council to vote no, and they voted no to annex. And that was a huge win for us. That was last month. And I got to tell you, like, we're still, even though like the bad news is coming, right? But we're still riding that high in many ways because it was such a huge effort. It was a 7-week sprint. And a couple, like last week or the week before, we found out that the developer has another deal with TEP, the electric company, the private utility, right? They can do whatever they want. And they are going to try to get into an agreement now to build the data center on that same site. And they want to, instead of using the water, I guess they're going to air cool it, which is even more power. Right. Yeah. And like one thing we learned on this journey, like from our neighbors in Phoenix, is data centers in Phoenix are responsible for 94% of the increased energy use.
Wow.
Yet the power company goes to the Arizona Corporation Commission, asks for a rate hike because of increased demand, and the Corporation Commission consistently gives them the rate hike they're asking for. So consumers end up subsidizing these data centers' power consumption. And we knew that would happen here. And if this thing gets built, that's exactly what's going to happen. Our power bills are going to go up. People die when that happens because they can't afford to run their AC when it's 114 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Literally.
And like that is it's just like the effects are like just like layered and layered and layered, like compounding the things that people are already struggling with. I want to tap in Myaisha here to talk a little bit about how you all got involved in supporting data center organizing and how it fits into MediaJustice's bigger strategic goals. Could you talk a little bit about the work that you've been doing and what you're tracking at the national level?
Sure. So when I joined MediaJustice, I was actually an organizer on criminal justice and tech. I joined MediaJustice about 8 years ago, and what was happening at that time in the country are incredible protests, fights against police brutality, police murders, and criminalization in Black and Brown communities. And people were winning, right? Like they were winning cash bail reforms. They were winning jail closures. They were winning policies to keep our communities safe from, police violence. And the narrative that communities on the ground were receiving was that in order to fix our crisis of mass incarceration, here's this technology to make prisons and jails and policing a little bit more humane. And so, we kicked off a number of fights to ban the police use of facial recognition, inform people of the dangers of predictive policing or risk assessments in the cash bail system, to fight this propaganda that technology, can save us. But as we were, leading on those fights, we were discovering that it's not just, local governments and police departments that we have to fight. It's also the companies that are manufacturing and developing this dangerous surveillance technology, to the police, to surveil and criminalize our communities. But and as much as those fights are, still really important to us, there was a real understanding that in order to curtail and abolish the use of that surveillance technology, we also have to pay closer attention to the infrastructure that allows for all of this technology to exist, which is how we, got into data centers. But I do want to pick up on what Vivek was saying about, the propaganda, and alluded to this, in the introduction, that tech companies are very much dominating the narrative around AI. And, we've been inundated with narratives from the last few years that we need to win this AI race, that the United States must lead the world in innovation and dominate technology to further cement our global influence and power, so that our rivals and enemies in China don't take over the world. And, I think especially over the summer with the executive orders and additional announcements, Trump and the tech bros and the oligarchy have really positioned this AI race as this sort of, in my opinion, this nationalist endeavor. And anyone who wants regulations, anyone who wants protections against this technology is framed as anti-tech, anti-innovation, and in a strange way, also like anti-American, right?
Yeah.
And so meanwhile, you have tech CEOs and venture capitalists and investors looking for the next, big thing, looking for the next big innovation to cash in on. And so you have all these companies competing with one another to build more AI, to integrate AI in our everyday lives. But all of this infrastructure cannot exist without, all of this technology cannot exist with the infrastructure without the computational power, which means that communities are seeing not just data centers, but these massive hyperscale data centers that we know drain our water, pollute our air, and gobble up an enormous amount of land. And so all of this is really a strategy. I think these local fights demonstrate that this is a strategy to concentrate wealth and consolidate power amongst a small group of people who want to maintain even greater control over our technology and our futures.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that like so much of this is sort of like tuned. It's like a corporate playbook that we've seen before in terms of like putting the greater burden of like environmental cost on like communities of color and certain rural communities, and like people that corporations think they can get away with saddling with these burdens. But it's like coupled with this like wild nationalist rhetoric. And I think one of the interesting things about this fight over like who owns our tech, what is the like physical infrastructure on which it's built, touches so many issue areas that you're talking about that are about, how do we prevent great power competition with China? How do we prevent unjust environmental impacts? That like those things are like connected through this issue in a way that I find to be fascinating and like, deeply relevant, I think, regardless of sort of where you sit in relation to big tech.
Yeah, and I find the narratives fascinating as well, just again, given my background in like surveillance and criminalization, right? Like we're being inundated with narratives that this is for the public good, that this is for progress. And at the same time, as I'm talking to folks who are facing data center fights, they're talking about like more bills to approve the use of facial recognition, more automated license plate readers, more like surveillance technology. And I just don't think it's a coincidence that this stuff is popping up so aggressively at the precise same time that you're seeing the infrastructure also expanding and being built out.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing here in Oakland right now is Oakland Police Department's relationship with Flock, right? The automated license plate reader. And it's wild because I was like, didn't we fight this fight? Like similarly, like years ago, right? Like, but everything old is new again.
Yeah, you guys did. And so many other cities did successfully ban, these surveillance technologies, but because the political climate has changed and now that, tech companies can kind of do whatever they want, we're seeing a real backslide on all of those ordinances, policies that were meant to protect people. I mean, a few years ago, we had this big win. Amazon announced that they were no longer letting police use, ring footage to this secret portal that they had access to. And then over the summer, who do you see again? Amazon, original CEO, announcing this partnership again. And I just can't believe that these things are coincidence.
Yeah. Keshaun, do you have something to tap in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say one thing about the propaganda machine that is painting artificial intelligence, which I have a name. I have a ick about the name anyway, because
yeah, for sure. Me too.
It's only intelligence as we know it, right? So as a technologist, that bugs me a bit. But the propaganda that AI is so innovative really ignores so many different things, right? Because the only thing that they truly are cementing is our reliance on fossil fuels.
That's right.
It's our reliance on fuels that are detrimental to our environment. And so they aren't cementing our place in history as, some innovative cohort. Like, we are being really shackled to the poisons of the past. And what I often reference is the fact that we are not learning from the industrial era. We've all lived through an era where very powerful oligarchs and who are still in power, right? ExxonMobil, BP, like, who are still orchestrating so much of what we even experience today because the reliance is still there, right? And so, and even on top of that, when we look at economics and this idea that, we bring a data center, the data center is going to bring jobs. They continue to say that everywhere. Whether it's in Arizona and Alabama and Georgia and Maryland and Memphis, they have this thing where they're talking about the digital delta. Data centers don't create significant amount of jobs. That's just reality, right? And so again, it's propaganda that speaks to a bias that people are looking for, right? People are looking for comfort in, economics around data centers. And so that's what they give them. But the truth is, data centers don't provide jobs, and the AI technology that they developed are taking away jobs. As a complete wraparound, data centers don't create jobs. They just don't. And so, the propaganda machine that we are up against is extremely thorough, because we see folks like the Memphis mayor, Paul Young, who talks about, endlessly about the benefits of the XAI facility being here. We have the Greater Memphis Chamber, who are the most wealthy folks in our area, who are constantly touting how great XAI and Brent Mayo and Elon Musk is and how brilliant they are. But we are continuing to leave out the people who are suffering because of these decisions. The people who are suffering live in Westwood, live in Boxtown, right? The people who are suffering, who have to live with elevated peak nitrogen oxide levels that have risen 79%. At this point, we have a pre-XAI pollution period and a post-XAI pollution period. That's how significant the pollution that they brought was. And they did all of this illegally and unlawfully without a single permit. And so the propaganda is simply that, right? It is an attempt to tech wash, right? Greenwash even the detriment of this technology and the data centers being used to support the technology.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason that we call this class war tech here. So, Let's talk a little bit about I guess like get into some of the sort of like tactical stuff that you have been able to deploy. I mean, Vivek, you got into this a little bit talking about being able to identify the city council as like the place where you could make an intervention. Keshaun, I'm curious if there have been similar things that you've discovered in your organizing that are like, how do you find the like levers of power to pull in these kinds of fights, because so much does feel stacked against us?
Yeah. And so one thing that I want to be transparent about is the fact that it is an arduous experience. It is extremely difficult to learn and find actual people who have power, who will support the community, who will stand with the community, who will fight for the community. It is so extremely difficult, whether it is, and where we first look to, right, is our city government, who we have the closest relationships with, or have been, more closely involved with, because they are involved in the trash pickup. The city government is involved in so much of what folks experience on a day-to-day basis. So you think immediately my city mayor, my city council persons. And so reaching out to those folks and then realizing they are turning around and telling you XAI is a great deal for our community. We should be, welcoming these folks, that the pollution isn't that bad. Mayor Paul Young actually backed a study that says, it was of no consequence, the amount of pollution that XAI was pushing out.
Yikes.
Right. And we have literal footage that shows 33 methane gas turbines operating at once, which would put them above the Memphis International Airport in pollution.
Wow.
Right. We're talking about at least 17.2 tons of formaldehyde, a known carcinogen, right? We know it causes cancer in the air per year, right? It's just this acceptance. And in the Byhalia pipeline fight, one of the folks called us the path of least resistance. And it is this continual idea that we are a sacrifice zone, right? We can suffer with the pollution. We can die because of the pollution. We can have the 4.1 times the national rate of cancer. We can have the highest rate of children with asthma who experience asthma emergencies in Shelby County. That's okay. We can have that here, right? Because these folks don't deserve clean air, clean water, or a healthy environment. And so it is finding those few, right, that who will stand with you. For us, it's Councilwoman Yolanda Cooper Sutton is a titan. Okay, she is 4 foot something, but is a giant as it pertains to protecting our community and fighting for what's right for us. On our county commission side, we have Commissioner Thornton and Commissioner Sugarman, who work tirelessly to help build out infrastructure and legislation that will protect us, not just now, but going forward into the future as things continue to develop. And so it is finding those few, working closely with them. But it's also, before you get there, focusing on your phone, right? Who are the 3 closest people, the 5 closest people to you that you can bring into this, right? And I'm sure, as you know, Myaisha and Vivek have organizing backgrounds. It starts at home. You make my brother representative, Justin J. Pearson, right? My mother, my father, Dr. Kimberly Owens Pearson, Reverend Jason C. Pearson. Like, first it was at home, right? And then you branch out into your deeper community and getting those folks on board. And from there, you leverage the folks who have a different set of power. But you start with and you continue with people power. And that's the biggest lever you could ever have.
Hell yeah. Vivek, do you want to talk a little bit? I know you mentioned that like the company that's building this data center is now sort of like changing its orientation towards the county. If you want to talk a little bit about like what that is looking like and how you are sort of like mapping the terrain now, like post the city council win.
Yeah, and just to name, I mean, Keshaun said this a little earlier, but like this wasn't, this couldn't have happened if it wasn't for the work that others had put in before us, right? Like for decades, Tucson has been the site of really strong pro-immigrant organizing, like against SB 1070, if anybody remembers that, the Show Me Your Papers Act in 2010, of doing rapid response work during the first Trump administration, really strong environmental justice work. And since inauguration, Tucson has really blown up. Like there was like, before it got hot, there was like a protest once or twice a week, reliably. We always had somewhere to go. And so that's a reason so many of those conversations were easy. And it's the reason why we had a place to go to have those conversations. So I just want to name that. And I misspoke earlier. The county supervisor who's really been doing great work is Jennifer Allen. And, one of the things that she's been doing after like we all got organized and showed up in such big numbers is really the Board of Supervisors has done a good job of guarding against what's happening, against this happening again, by implementing some changes to their processes regarding NDAs and environmental assessment. So that's really good. The bad part is, it's like fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on, no, wait, what is it? I'm doing
it's the other way around, yeah.
Fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? They got fooled once by the company, and so shame on them. The company told them during that meeting where they voted that they would not be pursuing this if the city council didn't annex. So we got city council not to annex. And it turns out they're lying because they're still going to hold on to that land. And what we need county to do is say no, like this was not the deal. And I don't know if that's what we showed up in numbers to do on Tuesday. I don't know where that's going to go. But if they don't, then they better worry about their jobs. Because it's clear that the community doesn't support this. It was so clear to city council that they voted unanimously against it. Right now, what I said earlier is this is a deal between the electric company, the private electric company, and the development company. So that goes now to the State Corporation Commission. They don't have a great record of supporting people, but we're going to do our best to build a statewide coalition now. So that's where the game is. Get in winners. We're going all state. And we also have an excellent effort from Tucson DSA that's been going on for years to make the private electric company a public utility.
Oh, cool.
So that campaign is called Public Power. That's getting a lot of legs. And so we're geared up and ready to support them in that. We already have a city council member, 2 city council members, and Paul Cunningham and our vice mayor, Lane Santa Cruz, who've come out and support. It's possible others have as well. I'm not sure. But that's another area for intervention, to just make sure that like we are guarded by a public process, because it is beyond messed up. I didn't drop an F-bomb, Kaden. It's beyond messed up that a private company can just get with this development company and completely circumvent our local authorities and go directly to the state. And that's what's happening with this return of Project Blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just hop in really quick and say that I think this is why it's so important to really be following the local fights and resistance that folks are leading against data centers, because I think these fights are really illuminating the sort of playbook that these tech companies are using to push forth with these data centers, right? Like they're using LLCs and NDAs to negotiate these deals in private to prevent people from having any kind of prevent people from having any kind of say. And I also think that the secrecy and the lack of transparency also means that these companies don't have to be forthright about their energy usage, their water usage, the impact that it's going to have to local communities. And so, I think these local fights are reminding us that when it comes to, air, our water, affordable energy, like these are not luxuries. These are basic necessities for our survival. And increasingly, these tech billionaires are becoming, frankly, the decision makers and gatekeepers over how these resources are being used.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I mean, it really feels like this is like the end game of neoliberalism in a lot of ways, right? It's like, let's get these tech oligarchs who are accountable to no one to determine who lives and who dies. It's crazy.
Right.
It's wild.
And the other thing that Vivek and Keshaun are pointing out too is how important it is to build really broad-based coalitions of people, right? Like, as we said over and over again, these are our basic resources that we need to survive. Everybody has a stake in data center projects, right? And so there's an incredible opportunity that I don't know if we always see that often in organizing, to pull and unite climate justice organizers, racial justice organizers, tech accountability organizers, to really challenge the power of these tech corporations, right? So just wanted to draw that connection.
It does feel like this is an opportunity to do some sort of like 201 level, like, let's do some real political education with people. Let's really figure out what it's like to move in coalition, which is really, that's the stuff that I find to also be really heartening in these times where it feels like the political landscape is so treacherous and really hard to get some traction on, that like finding fights like these where you can bring a broad coalition together and like see each other as real co-conspirators in a fight is like a big there's a win beyond just the sort of like concrete win of stopping something or shutting something down. There's a power building win that's part of this.
Thank you for illuminating that, Kaden. I think that's something that isn't really talked about as much, because so much of the focus is on the direct fight against these oligarchs. But we are working together in coalition. We have Black Voters Matter, right? It's focused on voting, but they are a central part in letting folks know what is happening in their district, right? As it pertains to XAI. We also have the Southern Environmental Law Center, the national NAACP, right? And our local chapter and our state chapter is involved here. We are working with the Sierra Club. Young, Gifted, and Green is another environmental justice organization. You have the Boxtown, community, Westwood neighborhood associations, right? So from our community organizations to very large organizations who cover a breadth of different issues are all invested in this, because we all are affected in so many different ways. And I think that is the real view of data centers that has to be promoted, that has to be seen, is that data centers are not just an ice cream shop being set up. Data centers are going to affect your everyday life in so many different ways, and they already are. And so seeing it as a coalition issue is something that we can continue to do better of, but continue to put that light and highlight that part.
Yeah, Vivek, do you have something to add about your experience of building coalitions in Tucson?
Yeah, if I can get through this part without tearing up a little bit. I mean, it's like the experience of like meeting folks who are committed to this, and just how wonderful and caring they are. Like we are for each other and for where we live, right? Like there's a lot of currency about like your hometown and kind of having lived here for a while. And there's also the reality of like, this is a place where we all want to continue living, right? So even if we haven't been here for that long, we are very invested in staying here. And like folks have opened up their homes for meetings. What has become clear is that the relationship we've built together as individuals will carry past this campaign. We are thinking about, how like we're sick of being reactive to everything. And we want to build something proactive. And we really are interested in engaging with this conversation about economic development and like what sustainable economic development can look like for our communities, right? There are all of these like big projects that our administration seek to bring, but big projects can bring in big money and also a lot of blood, right? So like, what are some smaller projects that like smaller investors who are actually have a stake in our community can participate in? What are the kinds of projects like that the county and city can facilitate to really bring folks in that way? That's like what we want to think about. And also there are other fights we're going to get involved in with too. Like there's this enormous 3,300 acre, like ours was 290 acres. We went to the land just to comprehend the enormity of it. Now they want to build a 3,300 acre data center just north of us in Eloy and Pinal County. There's a group in a neighboring city, Benson, that's reached out to us about like what's essentially an aluminum smelting factory they want to build out there. So we're building these relationships now with other communities in Arizona, and we are going to they're there to support each other. And that is truly something beautiful that's come out of this disaster.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. And I just wanted to maybe build off of Vivek's point in terms of strategies. I think another thing that folks should think about, or my recommendation, is start as early as you can. We know it's really hard to find information about these projects, but the chances are you're living in a state that already has a data centers, which means that, as Keshaun was saying, there are plans to expand in other regions of your state. So do everything that you can to find as much information about these projects, because, in the development stages or in other places we've seen, there might be delays. Those are the moments where you can really galvanize all of the people power that you've been building to show up and ask the hard questions that your representative should be able to answer, right? But it also gives you the opportunity to shift the terrain, right? And do what Vivek is saying, which is be proactive and think about, like, could there be ordinances in place that force public, transparent processes around data centers? Other ordinances that could prevent all of the pollution and the water usage, whatever the demands are that people want to see. Starting early is the opportunity to sort of get those wheels turning.
Yeah. Speaking of starting early, I'm wondering if there are patterns, Myaisha, that you all have seen in terms of like, what are some like warning signs that something is rumbling? Because I imagine that especially with these growing campaigns to fight against data center expansion and new building, that like probably these companies are like, oh shit, we got to do this kind of secret. Like we got to keep it under wraps for as long as we can.
Keshaun, do you want to go?
No, you can go first. I'll go after.
Okay. I mean, the warning signs, for one, I think if there's already a data center in your state, there are probably plans to build more. I think we're engaging with a lot of groups that are facing similar pollution issues that Keshaun has spoken about. Meta is building out, an enormous data center in Louisiana. And in order to meet the energy demands, they're building out 3 additional gas power plants in Cancer Alley. So there's the pollution side that are sort of the red flags, but honestly, it's also the utilities, right? People are waking up seeing their utility bills hiked by 8, 20, 50% overnight, and don't really know why. Nothing about their energy has changed. Nothing has changed about their usage of energy. And they're seeing, the cost literally on their bills to subsidize these projects. So between the pollution and the utilities, I think those are some of the warning signs.
I think that's perfect. Honestly, for me, it's a little bit broader. If you live in the United States of America, you're going to get a data center. That is how pervasive this is. And so if at all possible, the thing that I would pay attention to as much as possible is planning and zoning. There is a documented process where these corporations, these developers, and you're going to have to do a little bit of legwork to figure out that CTC Corp is actually, XAI subsidy. But connecting those dots with the planning and the zoning for your area and being able to track what these look like. And so, it's, again, complicated. It's time consuming, but if you want to get ahead of it, it is paying attention to that, because that is where they're going to show up first in those planning and zoning documents.
Yeah, I always get so excited when I hear about basically like organizing campaigns becoming like master classes and like how does power work at the local level. It like reminds me of some of my own experiences working on like housing organizing here in Oakland, where like we had to become experts in like California state surplus land law. Like, what is that? I don't know, but it's wild what you have to teach yourself if you want to win some of these fights. But like, yeah, I think to me, a lot of that, like, let's learn together is like some of the most unifying stuff with other people in a bigger coalition that like none of us are experts, but what we can do is look up things, ask neighbors who might have different expertises, and like there's something really cool about that that I find personally like really galvanizing. So
We have 2 urban planning students in our coalition.
Amazing.
And they've been just, one of them's messaging me right now telling me everything to include about planning and zoning.
Dope. I love it.
See if there is an electric connection in a large area that's for sale. You know,
Okay, that's great. Yeah,
we'll find you one of those.
Yeah, find a for sale large electric connection. Yeah, I mean it's stuff that's like it feels wonky, but like when you can connect it to these like really material impacts, I think you know, this stuff shouldn't be rocket science. It's like we need to pull back the curtain a little bit on a lot of these like bureaucratic processes. So as we round out here, I'm curious how folks can keep up with your work. Like, you know, plug where people can get involved in campaigns, especially if they're local to Memphis, if they're local to Tucson, and also pay attention to what's going on and share some of these stories more broadly. Let's start with Myaisha, and then we'll go Vivek and Keshaun.
Yeah, I have so many more things I want to rant about, but yes, please follow our work at MediaJustice. You can follow me or reach out to me personally. We do a lot of political education on everything related to the tech oligarchs. We had a whole series tracing the sort of plans and collusion that was happening within Trump's first 100 days. We're continuing to do political education. In fact, we have a report coming out on data centers in the South coming out this month.
Amazing.
With a webinar on September 17th. That's actually going to do some of what Keshaun and Vivek pointed out, which is trying to trace exactly the expansions that are happening in certain states, but also like the LLCs, the other investments, the other entanglements that are involved in helping these projects move forward. And yeah, so just follow our work, follow the report, and from there you'll find out more information about how to get involved with us.
Fantastic. Vivek?
We are at nodesertdatacenter.com and on Instagram at nodesertdatacenter with underscores between the words. So please do follow us there. If you're in Tucson or in Southern Arizona or in Arizona, message us. We can connect with you and, you know, fight these huge hyperscale data centers together. We're not trying to get in front of anybody's Netflix. We all want that too. That's not what we're fighting here. We're not fighting those smaller ones. It's these ginormous ones that suck up all our water. And also, please fund us. We don't have time to track you down if you have money. All right. Like, please, if you're a funder, like build up the capacity to find us yourselves and just throw money at us, because we're out here doing unpaid work. It's taxing, it's exhausting, and it's heartbreaking. And we need help. We need compensation for all this unpaid labor. So
yeah,
take
resources
on that work,
make a difference.
please.
Yeah. Keshaun.
Yeah, just affirming what Vivek said. Justice work needs just as much funding as the oppressive regime is funded, right? We have to be an equal opposite force. And so Memphis Community Against Pollution, we can be found at www.memphiscap.org. You can follow us on Instagram, MemphisCap_org. And my name is going to be my social media handles. So it's at Keshaun, Keshaun Pearson, Keshaun Pearson. And you can find me, and all of my chats and stuff are open. Feel free to reach out, email. We need to continue to build coalition. We need to continue to build the power that we will need to fight the most powerful people on the planet.
Amazing. Well, thank all three of you so much for this rich conversation. I also wish we had another like 3 hours to like really dig deep on this. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, for all of your amazing work. Has been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
Amazing. My thanks again to Myaisha, Vivek, and Keshaun for joining me today. And all of the links that our guests mentioned to connect with their work will, of course, be in the show notes. This show is published by Convergence, a magazine for radical insights. I'm Caden Mock, and our producer is Josh Elstro. Kimmy David designed our cover art. And if you have something to say, please drop me a line. You can send me an email that we'll consider running on an upcoming mailbag episode at mailbag@convergencemag.com. And finally, if you would like to support the work that we do at Convergence, bringing our movements together to strategize, struggle, and win in this crucial historical moment, you can become a member at convergencemag.com/donate. Even a few bucks a month goes a long way to making sure that our independent small team can continue to build a map for our movements. I hope this helps.